Welcome to the Silicon Fox podcast, where we explore the habits and stories of high performers. I'm your host, Mitchell Eschner. Omri, thank you so much for coming on the Silicon Fox podcast.
Thank you for coming to us, to the NFX office.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I always like to start these, give you a chance just to give us a rough introduction. Where did you come from? What did you do? How did you end up coming to NFX? And what is NFX?
Cool. So, Omri, nice to meet you. I'm one of the 5 general partners at NFX. NFX is a Silicon Valley and Israel venture fund. We manage $1.4 billion currently. We just started Fund 4 recently. Each of the partners is doing their own thing. My focus is the intersection of biology and technology and longevity. My goal in life is to end involuntary death and to have fun along the way.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why bother? And then my story is born and raised in Israel. After going to the army for 3 years, I started learning biology. First degree, PhD. Got the Fulbright fellowship, came to Stanford, did my postdoc at the medical school for 4 years, working on neuroscience, structural biology, synthetic biology. And then after 4 years, I started a company called Genome Compiler, which is a horrible name. And NFX was one of our investors. Genome Compiler built software for bioengineers back in 2011. So before Benchling, before other people. Ran as the CEO for 5.5 years. Learned a lot from mistakes. Lost all my hair. Gained 40 pounds. But luckily enough, we got acquired by Twist Bioscience back in 2016. It was a stock-only deal when they were still a private company worth $300 million. And I became the head of corp dev of Twist, and then they IPO'd, then they became a $10 billion company for 10 seconds. Yeah. Still a few $1 billion company, a very good company. And after Twist, I started my own fund, a $10 million pre-seed fund called TechBio.
Okay.
So I got the domain name tech.bio since 2018.
Good for
Trademark.
You. Good for you.
And then after 2 years, NFX that invested in my company and my fund, the biggest LP in my fund, told me the fund thing was a test and I passed, so I should join them. And obviously I knew them for many years and joined them in 2020 as a venture partner for Fund 2 and then became a general partner for Fund 3. Yeah.
I'm curious in this fund model, like this is kind of random, a tangent, but just curious, is this like a new common thing, like centralization of these smaller funds, 10, 15, $20 million funds, joining larger funds? Is this your story? Is this a common thing you see now, these platforms that can take you from pre-seed to IPO and they're more interested in getting these smaller edges?
Yeah, it's a great question. Like venture has been changing a lot and it's still changing. Right now you have this huge platforms, multi-stage, and you have single GPs funds and some things in the middle, and nobody knows how it's going to go. I wrote a blog post about why people should start their own fund and how it's not as hard as people think. And, venture is a small business. And I think that if you want to be a general partner, one of the best ways to be a general partner is to start a fund. And then here you go, you're a general partner.
Yeah.
Just like the best way to become a CEO is start a company. Here you go, you're a CEO.
You
might not be a CEO of a big company or a big fund, but at least you're doing the job and you're learning. And then, you can take it from there.
So what do you think about this, just on this topic quickly? Like, there was this long speech roll-off from Sequoia gave on venture is not an asset class that scales with capital. So if everybody should be a GP, is that a net positive thing for the industry? Or how do you view that? Do you think it's actually accelerating this goal of, you have a sign here, the race to 160, is that going to help us? Or is this, what's the
I have a lot of thoughts and I think it depends on the market. But look, if you think about venture long-term, like venture used to be like what? Less than 100 general partners. It was a very small industry where you got 60% of a company for 100K or something like that. And like every industry, the model was great and people made money. And when they showed that they made money, more money came to the market. And then you got to a point where, the power went from the hands of the investor to the hands of the founders. So all the founder-friendly kind of movement is pretty new. It's when founders got the leverage. And then different markets have different kind of leverages. Like bio right now has been through a 2-year downturn. So investor has more leverage and they can own more equity for less money. AI has a lot of leverage. So people, want no dilution for a huge amount of money. So it depends on time. I think in general, look, my focus is the intersection of tech and bio and longevity. And in that industry, I think the more money, the better. right? We have lack of capital, and the companies, we only make money for companies save people, cure people, increase longevity. So it's all good.
Do you think though that incentivizes, maybe it's an obvious question, but that incentivizes noise? You know, the more capital, then the more kind of posers or the less scientific a company
Oh yeah, for
needs to
sure.
be.
We call it one-topreneurs, people who want to be entrepreneurs. And every
Yeah.
hype cycle, you're in the hype cycle when the MBA students,
Yeah.
go start a company instead of going to Wall Street, right? And during a downturn, it's only the hardcore people that really care about the
Yeah.
industry that stays there. So, you've been through up and down cycles. I've been through a few cycles already. So you get to kind of see. But I think in general, like for example, right now in bio, because the lack of grants in the US recently with all the cuts, a lot of professors and students that traditionally would not start a company now said, hey, let's start a company. And on one hand, I think it's a great thing culturally because they want to start companies. They don't give, hey, investor, go start a company and we might join you because we want to be in academia. I love that, though I think many of them are starting company for the wrong reason or too early because they cannot get grants. They say, hey, let's start a company, which is not the best reason to start a company. You start a company, you want your IP, your technology to be more mature because once you start raising money, from people like us, then the clock ticks. You have 10 years to become a multi-billion-dollar company. So, but in general, I think the more the better. Yes, a signal, there is more noise. So the signals need to be higher. But I truly believe that more people trying new stuff is better because the winners will win.
Yeah, super fair. I want to kind of help us build this archetype and get into your mind as to how you think about who, what, why, where, all these questions. We kind of glossed through your background, but your background, you got a PhD. How do you think about academia and building this kind of archetype of the right founder? You just brought up grants and government academia, commercialization of tech. I think there's constantly a back and forth. I want to see, I've done a little bit of data analysis here to say, okay, like which founders are more likely to make it in tech bio. And I guess it depends what you classify as tech bio is basically the end of the question is like, is it like deep longevity tech? Is it, digital health? But how do you think about that? Do you think it's really necessary to have, a doctorate degree in this field to be able to speak, proficiently and build a large business? Or, do you have kind of these founder mode, move fast, break things, Elon Musk types to go build in this space?
You asked a lot of questions. Okay, where do I start? Let's start in academia
Yeah.
because I love my time in academia. I have a soft heart for academia in my head, in my brain, in my heart. It was time for me to go deep on the subject. What is a PhD? You go to the edge of human knowledge and you add something new, something new. That's a successful PhD,
Yeah.
right? And I love it. I love the intellectual curiosity. I love the freedom to do research. It was curiosity driven. It wasn't like, oh, you have to start a company, so you have to study this and that. And I think a lot of the breakthroughs comes from curiosity driven research. Let's change track now to starting a company. Starting a company is very different. Starting a company is you build a product or service, right? You need to build something people want.
Yeah.
You need to make money in the end. I love deep tech, both in bio and just general deep tech. In deep tech, what we see is a lot of time is the business guy and the science tech guy. For PhD specifically, look, it used to be that if you weren't like a white-haired 60, 50-year-old dude that already had a few exits, nobody would give you any money to start any company.
Yeah.
And then, people like Mark Zuckerberg showed that, hey, you can not even go to school, you can drop out of school and start a company. And then the money followed that.
But to be
Like,
fair, this wasn't a tech bio business, right? Like this
yeah,
was a
yeah, yeah.
social network business.
I know. I'm just saying, like, investor doesn't care. Investors want to make money.
Yeah, of course.
So if you show them that you can make money betting on that, then they'll bet on that, right? I think in bio and in deep tech, you're always looking for market founder fit. And, we want to invest in the best in the world. And the best in the world are usually in deep tech are the people who actually invented the technology.
Yeah.
They understand it better than everybody else. And if you still have R&D, they're the best people to start a company. Maybe not the CEOs all the time. I think the most important quality of CEO is the ability to fundraise,
For sure. Yeah.
especially in bio.
Yeah.
And to galvanize your team and to have a great mission and that you to be a leader that people follow. And my pet peeve on academia, as much as I love it, is that it doesn't train you for anything, including for being in academia. So my wife is a professor, and nothing she learned first degree, PhD, and postdoc trained her to be a professor. Like you learn to do science, you learn scientific things, and then you become a professor. You need to manage and get grants
Yeah,
and talk about your science, go to committees and whatever. It's very different, right? So they don't teach you to be entrepreneur. I think some people are born this way.
Yeah.
And yeah, so look, right now it helps if you're a PhD,
Yeah.
but if we will back anybody if there's a good product founder fit, we just want to make money.
And on the like point of making money and in tech bio, something that's interesting that I'm curious as to how you think, novelty and execution. I guess, how common is it that you see in tech bio first movers is really the winner in this case versus somebody that patches together a subset of different research, breakthroughs and patches it together, unlocks some kind of great distribution and builds a massive tech bio business? Because at the end of the day, right, you can build a business that's really innovative, or at least an idea that's really innovative, but you don't unlock distribution, you don't unlock reimbursement codes or whatever it is in a specific space, it never gets commercialized.
Yeah, well, look, there are many ways to win and there are many ways to lose.
That's fair.
I think also the one most important thing about investing, about the world, I think in general, is the power law.
Yeah.
Investing is not a nice distribution of outcomes where some companies are doing great, some companies are doing poorly, and most are in the middle. Investing is a very sharp power law where most companies will return nothing or very little or less than 1x, and very few companies will return way more than you expect.
Yeah.
And those unique companies are unique. And I think it's very hard. Like I saw companies become these unique companies by starting with novel science and technology, or some people that were able to gobble other things and get them internalized. There are many ways to win, though. The unique companies are so special and unique. Usually it's not a me too. It's there is something special about them.
That's fair.
And I think also it goes back to what you want to spend your life. Like life is short, even if we get to 160 and beyond. Like it's not forever, and you have precious time where you can be a founder, and you want to waste it on doing things that don't really matter. Yeah, so
that's fair. I mean, that's kind of my actually thesis as well. And an altruistic sense of building in healthcare, it's probably one of the most important things in the world.
Yeah, when I started my first fund, one of my LPs, a very famous cyber founder in Israel, is a billionaire. And I remember asking him, because he moved to investing in bio, ask him if he can, what can he teach me about that? So he told me, Omri, there's one way to make a small fortune in biotech. Start with a big fortune from cyber. And he was very bitter because he started from a big cyber fortune. He lost some money in bio.
Yeah.
It's not the easiest way to make money, but I think what I love is, first the teams. We have amazing, smart, passionate teams that I support. Second, maybe that's the first, it's the missions, trying to solve really big problems.
Yeah.
Of a company called Centivax, working on the universal vaccines. If they are successful, they might rid the world of the flu and then COVID and then herpes virus and then one by one. And not for our generation, but for every other generation moving forward, they'll give a new gift for humanity. Think about that. And, companies in cancer, company in longevity. So, the mission is amazing. So you only make money if you do good. And
yeah, that's fair. And I'm honestly just even like share with you on the side of it as the non-academia but young founder building in health tech, deep tech and AI. There is like this new for sure wave of altruism where you see young founders coming out and saying like, okay, a reverse deduction to say, okay, I grew up saying I wanted to be a surgeon, and then I said, you know what, okay, in the career of 40 years, I can save 10,000 lives, and I have one attempt at it, and I'll make X amount of dollars, or I can have 3 or 4 attempts at building a generational company that saves 1 million lives and makes 10 times the money. And there is like a massive shift in young founders, capable founders, academia, not academia, from a lot of different backgrounds, having this altruistic take to say, okay, I want to build in really like important and relevant industries.
I think it's, for me also, everything is difficult. Like,
choose your
being a teacher is difficult.
Yeah.
Being a miner is difficult. Building a small company is difficult. Being an owner of a restaurant is difficult.
Yeah.
So everything is difficult. So if everything is difficult, why not go choose something big that if you're successful, and funnily enough, the bigger the thing you're trying to do, it's almost easier. It can be easier over time because, the bigger the market, the bigger the vision, the easier it is to raise money, the easier it is to kind of hire and retain the best people, to get attention, to get noticed, right? So it's almost easier to think big than to think small.
That's fair, yeah. And I think Ben Horowitz said a similar thing, was like this, choose your hard, It's all hard
Especially in
regardless.
VC. People need to understand VC is very simple. Inflation aside, to become a VC-backed company, you need to be a multi-billion-dollar company in less than 10 years. Right? Very few companies can grow that fast, that big. And if you can't, you shouldn't be in VC. You shouldn't get money from VC. You should get money from other things.
Yeah.
So in VC, the bigger the better, for sure.
When what was your kind of winding back here? What was your PhD thesis in?
So my PhD thesis was on I worked on structural biology.
Yeah.
So trying to solve 3D structures, the thing you would do before, cryo-EM and before AlphaFold.
Yeah.
So actually, I helped build the database AlphaFold used to build AlphaFold, which is a PDB, the protein data bank. So I worked on both photosynthetic proteins. So the Nature paper I'm part of is solving higher plant photosystem 1 at atomic resolution. That's a beast. It's like 650 meg kilodalton, like beast. And then also worked on VETPs, so solve one of the subunits of VETPs. And then my postdoc was on neuroscience, trying to solve the structure of neurotransmitter transporters in human brain.
Would you say it achieved your the mission? You said in academia, if you're successful, you add a little bit to the frontier. Where was the frontier then? What did it add to the frontier?
Well, looking back, I had X amount of papers. I have Y amount of structures that I, contribute to AlphaFold, I guess, a little bit, that contribute to all the structures and contribute to understanding of a few proteins. I can't say it was anything earth-shattering, but, that's what I like about the scientific endeavor. Like some people say they believe in science, which I think is just a wrong thing to say. You should believe in the scientific method, not in science. Science can be wrong. Science is most of the time wrong. Right? It's a scientific method, which is a way to get to the truth. That's what matters, because people like to lie to themselves and believe to authority. And the scientific method is the real breakthrough of like the way to get to the truth by setting experiment, trying to prove you wrong, peer review, etc. And I just in love with the scientific method and this endeavor of humanity to build science on the shoulder of giants, like one generation after another, you build up and you get to amazing discoveries because of that.
Yeah. So, okay. So this brings up an interesting point. We've had a lot of these discussions, and AlphaFold always gets brought up in the TechBio space, and kind of these, step function changes that have led to this. What's next, and how much of it is hype versus reality? Because one of the things I talk about a lot here is like the delivery or the logistics behind this. Let's say that I can create the perfect drug for you based on a lot of your sequencing, et cetera. Manufacturing, delivery, honestly, like feedback loop of it actually working, like maybe theoretically on paper it worked, but then something epigenetically changed and we have problems.
I have so many answers for that question. I think one thing I like is to look 50 to 100 years in the future and look back and say what's obvious that was really meaningful.
Yeah.
I think sequencing was meaningful. I think DNA synthesis is meaningful. Sequencing in every way, DNA, RNA, I think a big step change will be in fertility, for example. I think in the future, most likely, most birth will be IVF. Why? Because you can select for the best genetics, I think, and have the best healthcare is to be born healthy. And then why not improve over time also? I think longevity is the most important thing. I think longevity is aging is a root cause of 9 of the 10 things that kills us. I would say even 10, but even depression, whatever comes, some of it, because why you depressed? You're growing older. So, this is what GLP-1 showed us, that if you attack the root cause, if you build something people want, first, it's a massive, massive, massive market, right? And everybody wants to be, thin and have the perfect metabolism. But also you can cure a lot of diseases, because it's a root cause. Like being overweight is a root cause of sleep apnea, fertility issues, cancer issues, diabetes, a bunch of problems. So while some people are overweight, everybody's aging.
Yeah.
Right. So if you can attack the root cause of aging, the market is everyone. The market is massive. I like to ask audiences, what do you prefer, especially young audience or midlife audience? Like, would you prefer to be 17-year-old and broke, or 70-year-old and multi-billionaire?
Of course, yeah, 17.
Most people, it means that they like they think that 60, 70 years, like 60 years are worth more than multi-billion dollars, right? So I think in the end, people will be willing to pay a lot for this.
Yeah.
And I think it's a way to solve almost all diseases in the end.
Are you a health coach or running a health course and looking to level up your client's experience? With Cyphox Health at-home blood test, you can deliver lab-quality blood work right to your client's door. Seamlessly ship samples back for fast and actionable results. Personalize every consult with the data that matters. Clients who complete a Cyphox test are 60% more likely to enroll in a paid program after their consult compared to those who only join a sales call. If you're ready to give your clients the edge, go to cyphoxhealth.com/partner. And as a Silicon Fox podcast listener, enjoy 10% off your first bulk order. But so how do you, like, specifically on, okay, so I guess like tackling at these at a macro level, there's value, but the actual delivery chain, like, do you think this is feasible? Do you think like AlphaFold at scale on a personalized level, building, drugs hyper specific to you? Obviously we see macro wise, this is great. Eli Lilly becomes the first $1 trillion company, in the pharma space, but the actual like feasibility here, like beyond the hype of this is a whole new industry of like logistics for individualized pharma to a whole new degree.
Again, I have a lot of answer for that too. Like what AlphaFold did, which I liked,
Yeah.
was they worked very hard to get a good model.
Yeah.
Like the first AlphaFold wasn't great. And then the second AlphaFold, got to a point that beyond 90, that was kind of the point where people said, oh, protein folding is solved. It's not really solved. There are a bunch of edge cases, whatever. And the next thing they did is solve all the structures the day after.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you saw Demis, they have a documentary about AlphaFold, etc. And he sat on a conference room with everybody after they did AlphaFold 2, and they told them like, oh, we can build this website, we can submit the structure, and then you ask them like how much it will take just to solve everything. Say, oh, it will take us like a month. So let's just do that. Right? Once you have a good enough model, you can solve everything.
Yeah.
Right? I love that on the delivery side, again, on the model side. And then in bio, look, the best healthcare is again to be young and healthy.
Of course.
That's the best healthcare.
Yeah.
The best healthcare is not to be sick. I actually think our healthcare industry is not healthcare, it's sick care.
Yeah. Yeah.
They cannot tackle you when you're healthy. If you're healthy and you go to a doctor, you just go get out of here. What are you doing here?
Right.
The healthcare industry is when you're sick.
Yeah.
When you're sick, you go and try to fix you, but that's usually too late.
Yeah.
Don't come to a doctor when you have cancer, prevent the damage that caused cancer.
Yeah.
So delivery depends a lot of what you're trying to do. If rare diseases are rare, but in aggregate, 30% of the population have some sort of a rare disease, right? So being born healthy is number one. So I think this is why I think IVF in the future will be kind of the preferable way to have a kid, because then you can make sure that they are healthy and maybe optimal. Like there is, Ella can get cancer and we does. Like we can modify ourselves, I think, in the future to delay cancer and onset or whatever. And then think about how cheap things are when they work and how expensive when they don't work. Like when you don't have diabetes, where your cells can regulate, how much sugar you have and how much insulin you have, it's free. You don't even think about it.
Yeah.
And when it doesn't work, you need, like, there are clinical trials now to replace those insulin producing beta cells, and there will be like $1 million per patient, right? The best healthcare is to keep and stay healthy. So, and on the delivery side, right now we see an explosion of expensive modalities. Antibodies are not very cheap, and cell therapies are not very cheap, right? And replacement therapies most likely will not be cheap, compared to obviously small molecules and other things. But I think in the future, especially if we work more preventative and replacement therapies, you can solve healthcare, real healthcare for most of the population. It will be expensive in specific places, but I think you'll change the model. Right now, the model is we spend most of our effort in the later stage of life on chronic diseases. And people are saving for retirement because they get too old to work and to be productive, and they need to have a retirement to live for. Imagine if we had a therapy that instead of saving for retirement, you save 80 years to get back to 18. Right? Wouldn't that be better? Yes, it might be super expensive. Like people save $1 million for retirement or $2 million. But imagine if you get that and you can go back to 18 and do it all over again. right? So healthcare might not be cheap, but you might have like a very, when you're young and healthy, you don't healthcare is very cheap.
Yeah.
You can have a very cheap preventative medicine, maybe some acute if you go into an accident, and then everything else is just replacement every 80 years or 70 years. That might be the future.
Do we have, like, as human, I guess this spurred a lot of philosophical questions, but like, as humans, do we have the mental bandwidth to say, I guess everybody says they want to be 17 again, but I'm curious in this, like, a lot of this is confirmation bias. Like, do they really want to be 17? Are they tired? With the same mentality, if we can re-age their bodies to be 17 again, and some of their internal systems, I mean, neurologically, I'm yet to see anything that like really.
I'm older than you.
Oh yeah.
Just looking at you, I don't know how young you are, but like, I know I feel great right now, luckily. But I know that when I feel great, life is good.
Yeah.
There's always more books to read and hikes to, and hikes to take, and parties to go dance at. When I feel bad, it sucks. And my dad died when he was 69 from cancer, and he was a champ. He fought it and fought it and fought it, and when his body gave up on him, he just gave up and said, "It's not worth living."
Yeah.
Right. So I think everybody likes to talk philosophically about how long they want to live, but the reality is, when you're sick, if somebody can make you healthy,
Yeah, I
you'll
guess you
pay
can.
everything to be healthy.
Sure. Yeah.
And when you're healthy, you want to live longer.
That's fair.
And, that's so for me, it's pretty obvious. That's the thing we need to
That's
solve
fair.
for.
On the IVF front, so IVF seems like one of the more exciting ones that you talked about.
Fertility, not just IVF.
Okay, so fertility, but a lot of them will be solved via IVF. How do you think about this, like, also philosophically? We started this conversation talking a little bit about, like, in an altruistic sense, health and TechBio, what's so positive is, like, it only works if people are healthy and happier. On the IVF front, obviously, like, at least in this day and age, and as we release this episode, people are still kind of in this mid-cycle of, like, optimization and some of these moral questions that are coming with IVF on, like, I'm going to go select my embryos and do genetic optimization and make my kid, 6'5" and blue-eyed. How do you think about this front? Like phase one and then phase two, of course, the beauty of Silicon Valley is democratizing tech. A billionaire and I have the same phone, but making longevity and fertility type tech accessible when the nature of some of it is pretty expensive, and it just takes a long time.
I'll start with the high level. The high level is we have to solve for fertility.
Yeah.
Because right now, other than Israel or Sub-Saharan Africa, all other countries have below replacement fertility rate. And that means if China has 1 children per woman, it means that every generation, the population is cut by half. Yeah. Every generation. And South Korea is 0.6 or 0.7. Yeah. So, and Japan and France and Italy. So I don't know about you, I like people. I don't want us to run out of people. I'm not worried we run out of people, but I think, right now what happened is the culture has been moving faster than the biology. Fertility is very democratized. When you're 17, fertility is easy. Like, you need to be careful not to catch, to get a baby it's so easy to get a baby. Like, that's what we evolved for, right? And the problem is depending who you ask, but we're not living in a culture where women start having kids when they're 18, they have 5, 6, 7, 8 kids, and then, stay in the kitchen and, knit me some sweater, right? As they should, they go, they study, they learn. But the lie that people told women is like, oh, build a career, and then at 32, you can get married and have whatever kids that you want. Well, the statistic is if you're a woman and you're above 30, your chance of ever having a baby is below 50%. And freezing eggs is not great. A, it's not cheap. B, usually people freeze egg too late, when most of the eggs are not great. And unlike Israel, where IVF is free, in the US it's not free. It's very expensive. And some people cannot afford it and they give up after 1 or 2 trials, which is very hard also. It takes a lot on you, right? So, and the fact that fertility is going down, I don't think it's because some dramatic change in our environment. I don't think it's pollution or anything else. It's just people getting married later in life. And people having people try to start having kids later in life. And our fertility just goes like that, So we have to solve fertility, because I don't think the solution is to get women to say, no, you can go build a career after you start having kids when you're 18.
So it's
And
not
the
a cultural
solution
shift.
is not to the population will decline all the way to ultra-Orthodox Jews and Mormons that will inherit the worth because they are the only one having babies, right? I think the solution is to solve for fertility, and there are a bunch of ways of doing that. They are not cheap right now, but I think they can be cheaper. I think eggs from stem cells is a very interesting approach, both because it allow women to have kids later. Eggs is a rate limiting step, or rejuvenating eggs. We saw that. And second, you talked about IVF and selection, right? Right now, you only have a few embryos, so you have very few to select from. But if you have millions of embryos, every couple can have like the real distribution, and they can select from the edge of the distribution. Like Gattaca said, it's still you, just the best of you.
Yeah.
Right. And then the ethics, can I curse here? I don't know.
Yeah.
Fuck ethics. Like people take it too much. Bioethicist is, I think, the worst occupation in the world almost. Like people deserve to get what they want.
Yeah.
Like, we had the 2 boys and a girl.
Yeah.
My wife really wanted a girl, and I couldn't promise her a girl unless we go through IVF and do selection. And there are people that are depressed because they only get boys or girls and they want one of each or whatever. And, some people stress a lot about height. It's important in our culture. And, the reason why some men are getting filtered in dating app is if they're below 6 feet, so you either lie or you get filtered. Why should people get stressed about it? Why shouldn't people select for what they want? I don't think you get like eugenic nightmares of everybody's blonde. I think everybody's sense of beauty is different.
Yeah.
And I think we'll get still the diversity of humanity, but people get what they want, and I'm all for it.
I guess I have. So you're a venture capital in this space is obviously pushing the boundaries here with who's building this. Obviously, like I want to flesh out this thought here. But I guess what's part of my second question within it was like democratization of this tech. Fundamentally, and this is like maybe outside of the scope of us talking about tech, bio, and science, but like even societally, right? There's like a looming wealth gap, and now we're going to create another gap and say, if we're going to say screw bioethics and say, okay, well, the wealthiest can now optimize the children to the extent, not that they already don't, right? Of course, everyone's going to private schools and doing all these things, but to the full extent where 50% of, I don't know if this was a true statistic, but what's going around in the genetic community, like 50% of IQ is genetic, and that wasn't the best study, but if that's the case and you can optimize for these kinds of things, you are building like a macro, especially as a capital allocator. Like, how do you think about those implications to some extent? Of course, I mean, at the core, I agree with you, but the actual implementation of it today. I want to talk about a staple in my routine. I've been using creatine for years, not just when I'm trying to hit a PR in the gym, but because it's foundational for how my body recovers and how my brain operates under fatigue. The hardest part about supplementation is knowing what to take. It's actually taking it. Consistency is the only thing that matters. If you miss a day because you're traveling or because mixing a powder is a hassle when you're running out the door, you lose some of the benefit. That's why I'm all in on the new creatine chews from Momentous. I've started using these daily, and the convenience is a game changer. I notice that when I'm consistent with these, my recovery between workouts is faster, and I don't get that mental fog late in the day. Creatine isn't just for building muscle. It's become a daily essential for your strength, focus, recovery, aging, and cognitive performance. And now, Momentous is making your daily creatine routine even easier with new creatine chews. Each chew delivers exactly 1 gram of CreaPure creatine monohydrate, the gold standard, single source from Germany and NSF certified for sport. It's trusted by Olympic athletes, pro sports teams, and elite military operators. You know exactly what you're putting into your body. Whether you're training, working, or traveling, this is performance without pause, made to support your body and your brain every single day. Right now, Momentous is offering our listeners up to 35% off your first order with promo code SiliconFox. Go to livemomentous.com and use promo code SiliconFox for up to 35% off your first order. That's livemomentous.com, promo code SiliconFox.
First thing is, an expensive solution is better than no solution.
Sure.
Some people say, oh, the rich shouldn't have it, so nobody should have it. I don't know. I think an expensive solution is better than no solution. An expensive solution get cheaper over time. The metaphor is always like the big cell phones that the rich people only used to have, and now everybody has a cell phone that costs nothing. That is better than those cell phones that they used to have. And now nobody has a cell phone better than, like the rich doesn't have a cell phone better than you. They have the same cell phone.
Yeah.
Like maybe like a little bit better, but you can afford it. Like there are very few things rich people can buy today. I think it's very dangerous if we live in a society where only the rich can live as long as they want. That's very dangerous because for the promise of eternal life, people do a lot.
Yeah.
People run, people go on plane and through buildings because of that promise, right? It's a very powerful promise. So I think it'll be very bad for society if that's what will happen. But I think again, every solution will start as a bad, expensive solution, and over time we'll get to a cheaper, better solution. And if the solution is so important for society, right? Imagine we find that the only way to solve all disease and live longer is to ethically have a clone and move your brain to your clone every 70 years. And cloning, you need to get it done. You need to kind of feed it for like whatever 17 years and take care of it or whatever and do the surgery. Not going to be cheap. But you can optimize society around that with automation and the way you, again, like right now, society pay you for retirement. Like you have the social security and you have all this method of transferring wealth to support the elderly. So instead of that, society can say, why should we do that? Why shouldn't we instead divert all our money to get people their clone so they can be young again and they don't need support? So again, I want to live in the future.
Yeah.
I want to visit the past, maybe for vacation.
Yeah.
I want to live in the future. I think the future will be better than the past. Again, if society stays, I think, AI and automation in all aspects, I think will give us a future of abundance. And I want to live in that future.
You might actually be one of the best people in the world to answer this question of like, just even like back of the napkin math. I guess we can both agree that we love people. My wife and I had our first kid at 19, like I'm all for this. But if this gets pretty democratized and people have access to longevity tech and they're doing this so-called process of whether it's cloning, however the process is done, do we not face like societal issues of overpopulation or these kinds of things? Like, is that, a super net true positive? I guess I'm just like trying to understand the landscape that a capital allocator comes from in longevity tech.
I'd separate it for capital allocation. Capital allocation is very simple. Again, like, there are two kinds of investors. People who invest their own money or people who invest other people's money.
Yeah.
People who invest their own money do it for whatever reasons, right? People who invest other people's money usually have a formula, 220. 2 is management fees, 2%. Like if you have $100 million to invest, you get $2 million every year. And 20 is carry. If you return $100 million, you get 20% of every profit you make for investors, right? And for us, the way the model work in venture, because of the power law, every company we invest have to have the potential to return the entire fund because most won't, right? So we only care that the company will be one of those power law companies that is big enough, defensible, magical, differentiate with the right people to be that big, that fast. That's all we care about as capital allocator. And in my mind as a capital allocator, I would say like, how big can it be is the first question I ask. And longevity is the biggest market in the world. I even wrote a blog post of why longevity is the biggest market in the world. If you know lifetime value for customer, LTV, lifetime value, longevity is the L in LTV, right? So, the longer the people live, the longer they need to pay for your service. Like it makes every market better, right? So, and it makes capital cheaper because people are more productive longer, so they can work and save more and invest more and reduce the cost of capital. And GDP is just how many active, people you have in society times how productive they are, right? So the healthier, the more productive they are for longer, the better, right? That's my thought as a capital allocator. It's separate than my thought as a person. I just think it's a root cause of most diseases. Like some people somehow in our society talking about longevity got some bad reps of tech bros wanting to live forever. So if you told people, oh, who wants to live to 200, not a lot of people raise their hands because they think, oh, we need to be like 90 years old for like 100 years. Nobody wants that. Yeah. In my mind is the only way you get to 200 is if you're 22 as long as you want. Yeah. That's something people want. If you ask people who wants cancer, nobody will raise their hand. Who wants heart disease? Nobody. Who wants Alzheimer? Nobody. The only way to cure all this disease in the end is to stay young. Yeah. So this is why longevity is so important, both morally, for capital allocation reasons, for almost all reasons. This is why longevity is one of my core things in investing and in life. I just generally very authentically care about it.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm so stuck on this topic because I'll probably give my last one before we move on here. But just to really wrap my head around here as to why we look at it as a net positive, which I agree with fundamentally. But like another scenario that's interesting, again, kind of as an individual, probably from this perspective, scarcity of time. Like probably yes, we want majority of the population to live. If they ever want to be 22, and if we give the world's greatest and most capable thinkers to be 22 forever, we'll have a lot of productivity. But I guess like even on the venture side, for example, like where I sit, having little capital to put into the business creates the most creative ideas, the most creative outcomes, urgency to some extent. If I have a promise of living to 160, I guess there'll be like a feedback loop and a lapse, or I guess some kind of latency between me realizing that the 44 is the new 22 kind of thing. But how do you think about that in terms of like, okay, let's say, maybe you don't think this far out, but I think you did say you think 100 years out. So if in 100 years this is the case and we can now live this long, will we
Look,
have
I
this?
want to solve for involuntary death, not for death. I don't think I can, will, or solve death, right? Involuntary death. If somebody had enough and, they can always jump in front of the bus, like nobody stop. Also, I think 200 years is also is nothing, right? I remember I watched the show Sandman. It's a very good show based on a graphic novel by Neil Gaiman. And in one of those episodes, a person that lived for 15,000 years dies. And Death, one of the characters, comes to pick him up. He was like, "Oh, can't believe I died after 15,000 years, but I had a good run, right? 15,000 is a lot." And Death look at him and says like, "You got what everybody got, a lifetime."
Yeah.
Right? So we all get a lifetime. In the end, it will pass quickly. Doesn't matter if it's like 70 years or 20,000 years. In the end, it will end. So, you'll always have the urgency to enjoy life. I think right now the problem is, again, I'm slightly older than you, but the first 20 years you don't know who the fuck you are even, and then you spend the second 20 years or 30 years kind of working on yourself, on your family, job, and everything else. And then you wake up when your kids are out of the house, you're 50, 60, and say, "Oh, now I can have some fun." But then you're already kind of old and you can't do the thing you used to be able to do in 20. And I remember talking to my grandmother that, she had Alzheimer, but I remember when she was still lucid, she used to tell me, like, when I look at in the mirror, I'm always shocked because in my mind, I'm the same girl I was you know? It just aging is just robs you. Like there's nothing good about aging, So I think I like to read science fiction. There's a great series of book by Peter F. Hamilton, the Commonwealth Saga, and in those books they have two things that I really love. They have wormholes, so you can just ride trains between planets, so you have infinite amount of space and resources, and then you have longevity treatment, where if you're rich, you do it every 30 years. If you're poor, you kind of middle class, you save like for your retirement, to do it when you're 80 or 70, and it gets you back to 18. Then he talks about those people coming out of the tanks, 18, with all their knowledge, but with their hot bodies and all their energy, and glacier self assurance because they've been through so much. And like, I want to live in that picture.
Yeah, no, that's super fair. I mean, I think that paints it much stronger for me. Kind of taking a few steps back here, we talked a little bit about, we actually had Dr. Robert Lufkin on, who is one of the bigger like pioneers of this, like sick care versus healthcare, and what the differences is. What is biology first care? Maybe that, I don't know if that's the way you want to categorize it, but non-sick care healthcare look like? Are you advocating for just companies that do like MRIs and blood labs and these other things, or what is this? Because this all kind of fits into like longevity and preventative health, and getting like from first principles, getting med students to practice this properly, getting everybody to implement these kinds of lifestyle changes,
Yeah.
which is difficult to do.
Yeah.
How do you think about this shift, and what actually does it look like? Because everyone says value-based care or something, and that has no response.
I have my ABCD plan for aging, to end aging.
Okay, I'd love to hear this.
And most people fall on plan D, which I'll explain. But if I look at the gamut, and I'll talk about the ABCD plan, but if I look at the gamut, I think it starts by being bone health.
Okay.
Like IVF and kind of screening and etc. And then things like preventive health and healthy lifestyle, vaccines. We invest in a vaccine company, not getting sick, or if you get sick, not getting that sick. I think that is very important. But in the end, all of those fall to my plan D, and plan D is plant death. And Brian Johnson is on plan D. And, it doesn't matter how well you eat, rest, exercise, perfect genetics, everything, you won't live to 160, right? You know that. You live to 120, 122, and you don't really like the last few years, right? That's plan D, and currently all of humanity is on plan D. Yeah. Plan C is cryonics. There are people in the Bay working on investing in that. The notion is cryonic is, I don't like it, I don't invest in it, but the notion is instead of understanding aging or stopping aging, let's just stop time for a while and hope that future generation will solve it. The only thing that is good about plan C is that is kind of better than plan D. I'll take an insurance policy on plan C, and hopefully somebody in the future will solve it. But it gives agency to the future, and I don't like it. And plan B is bioengineering, and that's what most people are working on. It's kind of a lot of companies in our portfolio trying to understand the root cause of disease and kind of one by one curing them. But the problem is it's almost like the worst game of whack-a-mole, because you cure one sort of cancer to die from another sort of cancer, you cure that to die from Alzheimer's, you cure that to die from heart disease or brain disease, right? So until you solve everything, you don't really move the needle. If you cure all cancer today, you'll increase lifespan by 3 to 4 years. That's it. And my plan A is alternative bodies or replacement. And the notion behind that is we don't need to understand aging or solve aging, we just need to replace. Right? Nature solves aging. Old people can have young babies. Like there's something magical about going to one cell and creating a whole body that refresh lifespan, right? Because if I'm 18, I have a baby 0 year old, and if you have a baby and the baby is 0 year old, right? So, and that's something magical that nature solved, or we didn't have nature, right? So nature solved aging, and we humans, we solved aging for our cars. When I drive in California, I see 300-year or 200-year cars. Yeah. They just replace all the parts, right, with young, genetically identical parts. So I think we can solve aging by replacement. And we try to invest only in companies that will move the needle in the race to 160. And I call it the race to 160 is because I think that you can grow a lifespan linearly, very slowly. But I think once you won't find yourself in 160 just by linearly growing lifespan. I think if you get there, and it might be 200, it's just a random number, but it's a few sigma away from 120, which is kind of what we already know that our core technology, biology can get us. Right. It means that you solve everything. Like, I don't think you will find new things to solve when we're 300. I think like either you solve all the problems or you didn't. And if you solve all the problems, why stop at 200 or 300 or 400? I think you solve all the problems. Other than like getting like hit by a bus.
Yeah.
There's a low chance of like something bad happen every year. But I don't think it's a linear thing. I think it's a very sharp exponential. I think once we solve everything, we solved everything.
Do you think that every problem is mapped out? I guess this would assume that every problem, like we know all the problems, they just need to be solved.
Well, think about it. Like we don't know what causes Alzheimer's, really.
Yeah.
We have some notions.
But we know that it's a problem.
We don't know, but it's a problem. We don't, like, we know some of the problems that cause heart attacks, but not all of them. We definitely don't know how to cure all cancers, right? But what if I told you, oh, you have lung cancer? Yeah. Let's replace let's put your brain in a new clone. Did I solve your lung cancer? I just solved it.
I mean, yeah, I guess.
I also solved your heart issues if you had one. I solved you amputated your leg. I solved that. I can solve everything.
What happens with the old clone? I'm just like, this is a relatively new space.
Yeah, you move your brain, right?
Yeah.
It's one small thing we need to solve. Yeah. But I'm not just saying that. We made only 3 investments in longevity so far. Well, 4. We just made a new investment. One is a company called Permanence Bio, working on molecules to reduce the rate of mutations to prevent cancer and prevent a lot of aging. One is Powerhouse Bio, trying to work on mitochondria, which is a powerhouse of the cell. A lot of aging is mitochondria aging. One is Cyclana Bio, they just invested in London. They trying to turn fibrosis to regeneration, starting with endometriosis, which is also women's health. But, in general, we can regenerate. But so it's in our genes to regenerate, right? But we lose this capability sometimes in life, or some organs still have it while other doesn't. If we can unlock regeneration, potentially we can keep regenerating, and that's part of longevity. And the most exciting company, I think, in the tech is a company that I started with Professor Jakub Hanna from the Weizmann Institute called Renewal. And his paper, he'll win the Nobel Prize for this. His paper was published on the cover of Nature and Cell. He was able to make human embryos from stem cells. So no sperm, no egg, and no uterus. I can take adult cells, turn them into stem cells, turn them into stem cell derived embryos, grow them outside of the uterus, and get young genetically identical everything. Currently, we're at day 25 already. So we're getting into gastrulation and organogenesis. And the idea is the dream is one have day, if you can do it ethically, technically have an entire clone to replace, but you can start at day 28, you can already have hematopoietic stem cells that are genetically identical and young to cure a bunch of disease, but also to renew immune system. At day 40, you can have brain tissue for stroke. At day 70, you can have gonads produce eggs for people. So it's really magical. It's one of the most like deep tech, interesting companies I'm working on.
That's fascinating. So this would play into this crazy theology we've had that like it's a humanoid. If they have a uterus, we can create an artificial womb and let a humanoid have a baby.
No, it's not. It's not about that specifically.
But it can.
We are working on artificial womb. You could say it's a bioreactor right now. Yeah. It's not really artificial womb, but in the fullness of time, it might be. But right now, we're using it to grow those stem cell derived embryos, which is ethically great. Also, funnily enough, a lot of embryo everything work in the US is frowned upon, mainly because of religious, many Christian religious worries. But when the paper was published in Nature, the human paper, when we got to day 14, it was published and then it went to the New York Times, CNN, and everywhere. And it came to this Christian fundamentalist website and podcast, and they talked about it in the podcast. And I tuned into it because I want to hear what they think about it. And they said, look, we believe life begins conception. Conception is sperm and egg coming together. And your process is no conception, so we're fine.
Oh, interesting. And so if this turns into human, this is not...
It's not really human. Like, wow. Jesus didn't say anything about it. It's not in the books. It doesn't have a soul, so it's fine.
That's going to be interesting. That'll be a fascinating one. I'm curious on back to this, now kind of back to this healthcare as a capital allocator section. I've had this conversation a lot, and especially like keeping up with everything and building in this space. I'm seeing a lot of things, and again, maybe this is just a lack of seeing cycles, but it's kind of been interesting how to think through as a capital allocator versus kind of an altruist of wanting healthcare to be successful. And what I mean by this is like, when you think as a capital allocator, how often is it in healthcare? And I guess maybe this is a little bit different than TechBio, but in health, maybe even TechBio, where the outcomes are positive, but I guess what you said earlier, in some cases can be not the case, where the outcomes aren't great, but the company goes, it builds fast and large and does things. Because what I'm getting at is maybe not like a generational company that'll last 15, 20 years and will reach 100 billion. But I'm talking like there's all these companies coming out with a lot of noise that are maybe building a wrapper for LabCorp and Quest. Maybe, doing like 10 million different things where maybe it's going to drive true clinical outcomes, but so far, we're not getting that feedback and what's really new, what's really pushing the needle. But as a capital allocator, this was a really net positive outcome. How do you think about where those diverge?
Yeah, I don't have my NFX hat, but I have an NFX hat in my bag. Maybe I should bring it, because if I would put my NFX hat, my investor hat on, I would tell you our LPs, our limited partners that invested in NFX, didn't invest in us to do good things. They invested us to make the money. Yeah. A lot of them are endowment of not-for-profit, we have children hospitals, and they tell us, you make money, we do the good things. Yeah. And the way we are incentivized, the way we make money, the way we are successful is by returning capital for our investors. So again, with my investor hat, my role is not to do good things, is to return money for my investors. I decided to invest in biotech, which is, again, as I told you, not the easiest way to make money, because I care about it. And I think I have a good fit for that. That's my background, but also I really care about it. And I think everything in scale. So I want to separate like good for society and good for investment. There were companies that were acquired for $10, $12 billion.
This is my
pharma
question.
Companies that the pharma that acquired them didn't get any benefit. Everything failed and they had to write it off.
This is kind of my question, is like thinking through that specifically.
Yeah, that company was good for the investors, was good for the employees, good for the founders, but wasn't good for the buyer. Like if all outcomes are like that, pharma will not buy those more companies, right? So you need to have success. Like people like to say that we're okay, we like failure in the valley, but we're not. Like you have to understand, the good thing about the valley is you're not punished for failure.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to do harakiri because you failed once, right? But it's failure on the way for success, right? It's when people say, "Oh, look at Elon Musk and all his rocket explode." I tell them, "You stupid assholes!
Yeah.
His rocket explode because he's live streaming what he's doing, and he learns from each of them to be successful."
Yeah.
Right? If his rocket keep exploding and he couldn't go to space, that would be a failure for everybody into the world, right? So it's only failure in a way, in iterating to get to a success, or learning,
I
or
guess.
becoming somebody who can be successful. Like we still need the successes, right? So again, while capital successes might be separate from society's successes,
Yeah.
or even the buyer successes, or a drug that didn't get to market, or whatever, or company that IPO'd, peaked, and then crashed. It can be still be good for the investor, for the team, for a lot of other things. But in the end, if all of the outcomes would be like that, there will be no market, there will be no industry. We have to make real, meaningful, beneficial things to the world, right? Or it doesn't work.
Yeah, I guess this starts to make a lot of sense if you think about it through a specifically like a biotech perspective, because then these companies don't get acquired. But I guess where I'm coming from the question sideways, maybe it's not as relevant to your guys' thesis, but it's like if I'm selling to an end consumer, in theory, I can there's plenty of businesses that we can probably name where the consumer feels good, hypothetically.
you talk about that.
Yeah, but and then they don't actually do anything. But as a capital allocator, what's really hard is you have to have such a dynamic thesis to say, okay, well, in biotech, I'm going to evaluate whether it works or not. And then in health, I'm going to evaluate whether or not this person has a big brand and consumers buy what they will to go sell secondary and whatever else.
Consumer companies are very weird. Like they can grow really fast. And it can be anything from writing like 260 whatever characters and or sending pictures to people or whatever. Don't underestimate that.
Yeah.
In the good thing about free markets when they're really free is nobody makes you buy a service or a product. You only buy it if you want to, right? With your own money, right? That's what I like about the private market compared to a lot of healthcare and the public market, right? Not public in that regard, but government, etc. Because I can choose where to spend my dollar, and I do it only because I want to. Nobody makes me do it, right?
Yeah.
And everything in scale has value. Nothing grows to become really big if customers doesn't want it, and if they want it, that's a value. Like people want to watch videos on YouTube, and it become a really big business. And is it good for them? Does it save you that? It doesn't matter. Like that's what people want, and that's what people choose to do.
But I guess specific and where it's it gets a bit complicated is in healthcare though, it does kind of have to be good for you in some regard. But
no, but let's separate that. Like if somebody buy Function Health, let's say, and a wrapper for diagnostic test, right?
Yeah.
And he takes 2 tests a year and get all these biomarkers.
No clue what to do with it.
No clue what to do with it, whatever. But he feels good.
He feels good.
He feels good. Feeling good, like the actual drug market where people buy illicit drugs and drink alcohol or whatever to feel good. That's way more healthier than that, So it makes them feel good, and it make them healthier just by trying to optimize for things. And there's nothing. I'm not trying to put judgment against that. Like again, as a fund, we're a general fund. We also invest in games or whatever, where we can make money when people spend too much time and money on games, right? I'm focused on bio, and in bio, I focus on things that I think move the needle. That's me personally. I'm not saying I'm smarter or better than anybody else. I'm not saying I'll make more money than other people. I'm just saying that's what I care about. I believe fundamentally, if you solve a real problem that people care about, like GLP-1s, for example, you'll be rewarded. But that's not the only way to make money. It's definitely not the easiest way to make money. And I'm putting a judgment aside. I used to be all high and mighty when I had my own company, and I thought, designing DNA is the most important things in the world. And who are you, all these people doing cyber and games? It's all stupid. But no, there are many things society needs, and everybody that supply society demands get rewarded, and that's great.
No, that's super fair. How do you think about open source? I guess we can silo 2 hats personally on the biotech side as an investor, open sourcing these models and, having the ability to do sequencing and computational stuff in biology and genomics, et cetera. That's open source. Is this valuable for society? Is it not? Does it create,
Again, 2 different hats.
Yeah.
For society, it's valuable.
Yeah.
And by the way, people are doing more things, not just for money. There are many things that motivates people, status, what other people think about them, so many things. Money is just one of them. In software, a lot of software is maintained by an open source. So it's just people spending their own time to debug and create new software, and not for money, not for fame, but for fame or recognition or whatever, right? And that's fine, and it's good for society. I'm separating that from when you're a founder. When you're a founder, Peter Thiel said it best. He said, competition is for losers. Yeah. You want to be a monopoly. In the end, people who make money are monopolies. They have pricing powers, and in a monopoly, life is good. Your employees are treated well, you can pay them well, the investor get paid, the founders get paid, the employee get paid. That's what you want to create as a founder. You want to create a monopoly. Because if you're not a monopoly, think about the fun companies and the depressing companies. All the fun companies are monopolies. Google, Facebook, Facebook, whatever. The employees are treated well. They have high paid. They have snacks in the office, whatever. Think about crappy companies. I don't know. The entire airplane flight, United and all of that. They have no pricing. Like if you want to get there, you'll just buy the cheapest tickets. Yeah. Right. So they cannot afford to pay people as much. They make maybe a lot of money, but their profits are very thin. It's just a worse business.
That's super fair. I mean, I actually didn't think about it.
Create a monopoly. Now again, like being an open source or not being an open source, it's a business decision. You can still be in a monopoly. You can still create a great business on top of an open source in different ways, as history showed us. And so it's just a decision you need to make. It might be a philosophical decision. You might feel like, oh, this technology should be open for everyone. It might be a business decision that it just makes sense for your industry. Who knows?
Kind of encapsulating a lot of what we just talked about in the past hour. What are you most excited about looking forward? I mean, obviously your thesis is all in on longevity, and we talked about certain key topics, but maybe like really granularly, whether it's a portfolio company or what you want to see built in the next 5 years.
I'm so happy that I'm alive and healthy right now. Like, I think you should be happy too. I think the audience, obviously, anybody listen to that has a phone, have internet, and should be so happy they're alive. I think in all of history, you couldn't see any one generation tell like they had a real chance to live for as long as they want. Like it could never happen. Not 100 years ago, not 50 years ago. I think we live in a generation where with a straight face, you can say, like most investors will tell you, we don't know what's going to happen. Like the notion of a singularity, or the notion of things moving faster and faster to the point that you cannot predict what is going to happen is upon us already. Yeah. A lot of software and AI investors cannot invest in a horizon of more than 5 years. They just, even 2-3 years, it's so hard for them because things are changing so rapidly. In bio, I still know, okay, clinical trials will take some amount of time, whatever. I am super excited. I think technology should move faster, not slower. I think we need that. We need that as society. We need it as a civilization. I think it's a race between how fast our technology can move, because we cannot go back. Like going back is the world cannot sustain 7-8 billion people. Like they can only sustain it with technology and more technology that we have, right? The technology, if we are stuck at the current technology level, we're screwed. Like we have to have not just more, we have to have exponentially more. And I think right now we're in a race between a future of abundance for everyone to extinction or kind of flatness, like really bad futures. And again, it doesn't seem like the AI of today can take us there, but I think where the AI of today can take us to AI of tomorrow that might take us there together with automation. I think biology will take longer than people expect. When all the AI people go on stage and say, "Oh, we'll cure all disease in 5-10 years," you don't know biology, right? It doesn't matter how smart you are. A baby is born in 9 months, not in a day. If you're smarter, it doesn't born faster. If you're smarter, the cells doesn't, multiply faster. There is time that things takes, and it's very complicated. We don't collect all the data, but I see the benefit of AI and automation in biology too, and how fast we can learn and change and improve things. And I do see specific technologies that I can tell you in our lifetime can really move the needle. Like I look at renewal. Currently we're at day 25. I see us getting to 18 years, and then we solved almost everything. One company. right? So I see Sentivax, I see them curing all viruses. Like I see it happening, so.
How confident you are that this is like an exponential growth? Just because if you look at it, this kind of hinges on AI, at least it seems, because if you look at a lot of these AI gamified benchmarks, we actually have like had periods of stagnation, even in the like past 3 years across quarter over
I think
quarter.
nothing is truly exponential. I think it's a bunch of S curves
Yeah.
together, like overlapping.
Yeah.
It's always like S curve upon an S curve upon an S curve. And I think AI is overhyped and underhyped at the same time. I think it's like the current AI is not as meaningful as people say it is, even though it can achieve all this amazing test that most human can't. It's not like you have an AI that is as smart in everything in life and can, you can spin off millions of virtual geniuses to do to solve all of the world problems, right? We have some lag yet, but the rate of change has been so fast that if it will continue, and so far the scaling law still stand, like Gemini 3 shows the scaling law for pre-training still works. There are more computational, like we can have more data, more computation, and more algorithm breakthrough. We had a company coming to us trying to scan the brain because they say, hey, we have an AI, like we have a network that can produce human level AI. So if you can just that's why it might be one source to solve the AI problem. So I think we'll solve it. I think it will be super meaningful in the end. If you have intelligence and you have the ability to function in the world, like robotics, automation, and intelligence, everything else become as cheap as energy. We have this free ball of energy just spewing electrons on us from the sun. We can collect it. We can turn, salt water to fresh water. We can, turn electron to food. We can turn energy to manufacturing. You can have robots manufacture more robots and manufacture anything else. Like we can do a lot in the future.
That's fair. I mean, it's an exciting future to look forward to.
And of course, there are risks, especially in the short term. I'm not worried about the paperclip stupid idea. I think AI that will be smart enough to turn everybody to paperclip will be smart enough not to do it. I think the kind of definition of AI is when he'll come to us and say, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
And why should I do it? I think once we discover real AI, he'll just negotiate with us to go to space and leave us alone with some stupid AI so we won't fuck ourselves. But, so I'm not worried about that future. I'm just worried about the human stupidity, kind of thinking that, it's just one pie that we need to share, a shrinking pie instead of growing the pie,
This is so interesting to me, and I'm guessing you have these conversations a lot, so maybe there's something you already know, but it seems to be like a lot of these conversations that I have with people building at the frontier in these industries are very like looking at AI from a very, I guess maybe other than like the Ilya Sutskovers of the world, a lot of other people are looking at it from a very bullish perspective, saying like, I think this is something that's a very additive rather than a Terminator coming to get us, which is interesting.
The one, like, I think in general, it's super positive. I think the one thing that is different this time is that in the past, we automated our muscles. Now we're automating our brain. And what else? I think you're done. Like once you automate the muscles and the brain, and it's smarter than humans, then what is the value of a human? Economically, I think the value is very low economically. So I think in the future, the only way socialism work is with a lot of slaves. And the only way it can work, funnily enough, it might be that capitalism taking to the extreme will get you the communism heaven everybody wants. Because if you have automation, you have smart, like everything is super cheap. Like all products and services are like almost nothing because like you have free electrons from the sky and you have this robot that can be the best surgeon, the best hairdresser, the best tailor, the best everything else. You can manufacture everything from scratch. Like food is cheap, clothing is cheap, everything is cheap. Then you can afford universal basic, not income, but lifestyle. And I think, you have to think about the lifestyle and purchasing power more than like too many people are fixated by numbers. Oh, I made $100,000 this year. I made $200,000 next year. Like I'm twice as rich. They should be focused on purchasing power, what this money can buy to you. The middle class today are much richer than the richest of the rich in the past. They have better healthcare, they live longer, they have better foods, they have better entertainment, they have better travel, they have better everything, right? I think the poorest of the future will be much richer than us today. because they'll have perfect health, they'll have any product or service they want at a high quality, very cheaply. I think the only thing that the rich people can buy is maybe the house on that street, because there's only one house in that street, or they can buy a human chef preparing the food in an old traditional way. It won't be better. It'll just be almost like just a status game. It won't be like life and death kind of game.
It'll be more normal to have a robot. It's interesting. There's like religious concepts of this, the belief that like we kind of get to full abundance and we focus on family self-improvement and
it'll be a question. I think that would be the major last human thing to think about. Like, what is the meaning of life where you don't have to work, right? Where you get your deep meaning and satisfaction from, right?
Probably
And
resorts to religion.
but that's who knows? But that's a problem for kids.
Yeah. No, super fair. This was a fascinating conversation. We went from biotech to philosophy and back, but really appreciate you taking the time and loved having you in the Silk and Fox podcast.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
I love it.